Hi everybody, DJ Trains here. Welcome back to a series that I have only done one episode for so far, layout stuff. So this is going to be the second installment of that series. It's been about, I think, a month since the last one. And yeah, so this week, or this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Arlesdale section of my layout, the Arlesdale Railway. For a bit of context, for those of you that don't know or haven't read the Railway series, you haven't really watched the Brenner era of Thomas and Friends, basically, the Arlesdale Railway is a miniature railway on the western side of the island of Sodor. It's kind of like, it's kind of near Duck's Branch Line and above Thomas's Branch Line. Actually, Duck's Branch Line doesn't intersect, it runs like kind of alongside it for a little bit, near the ballasting loaders. In the TV series, however, the Arlesdale Railway, at least in the early model series, the Arlesdale Railway didn't appear because A, the models were too hard to make, but B, when they created the first season of Thomas and Friends and they saw that Toby had an old line, they put Toby's line where the Arlesdale Railway should have been. When in actuality, Toby's line in the books was on the mainland. But I digress, that's a whole other thing. We're going to talk about the Arlesdale Railway. So the Arlesdale Railway, in the books, came into existence in 1967. It was built along some of the old track beds of the Mid Sodor Railway, which had closed. And it was built to deliver ballast and other things, wool, passengers, etc. And there was 3 engines that were given to the railway by an old railway in England that had just closed down. Rex, Bert, and Mike. And in the books, they appeared about twice for 2 books, and that was it. They didn't have any more appearances. And they never appeared in the TV show either, although Mike got a fair amount of merchandise for some reason. However, in 2015, the Arlesdale Railway made an appearance in the movie for that year, which was Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. So they were brought into full CGI. The railway finally made its appearance into the TV show. Depending on who you talk to, it's different canons. I personally see the entirety of the show as one canon, except for like the new reboot stuff. But I digress. We're here to talk about the Arlesdale Railway. So let me just take this off my camera stand. So now that we have context, I can show you my layout of the Arlesdale Railway. So just so we're clear, this loop line here is not the Arlesdale Railway. This is still standard gauge, and it goes out. This yard and this loop here is all the miniature gauge, the Arlesdale Railway. That's that. So let's get into it. So as I talk about this, I'll just kind of do a quick panning shot. So initially, the Arlesdale Railway I never had a set for. When I first received a few of the miniature engines, and they were prominent in the show, I never had room for a set for them. So I usually just kind of made a small like 1-track line, and that was it. However, when my stuff was moved into the room that it is now, I had a little bit more rooms. And this section of table here wasn't here. My layout initially was just this, and that's going to be a recurring theme, the extensions of my table. So what I ended up doing was I actually took a coffee table in my house. I set it down right here, and it was much lower too. Like the coffee table itself was probably only about this big. I set it down, and I used a hill track from one of the adventure sets. I think it was like the Misty Island set, maybe it was Misty Island, I'm not sure. So I took that and I built a small little loop with this and the water and beach adventures track pack, and that was my layout of the Arlesdale Railway for a while. None of this scenery existed. None of this backline existed. And the coffee table itself was actually just a black coffee table. Yeah, none of it really had any sort of prominence, never looked really good. But then I got the extension for my table in 2018. Yeah, 2018. I got the extension for my table, received the extension, and so I was able to like fully kind of build it to my liking. So initially what I did was I took away all the beach stuff because I thought it didn't really fit that well. So I took away the beach stuff, and then I put in the orange and gray, like the orange bridges and the gray track. But the orange was really kind of standout. I didn't like it. It didn't really fit. So I decided, you know what? I will put the brown bridges from that same water track pack. And it looks good. And I did the same with the little guardrails too. And I think it looks a lot better, personally. So those were the main changes. And then after that, I added the loop line back here so that we can have one continuous main line. Let me just turn the turntable so it does line up. So we can have one continuous main line throughout the entirety of the Arlesdale Railway. Then I added this little siding back here, which I'm pretty sure I had beforehand, but I might have changed it a bit. This siding here for the Arlesdale engines. So let me just go down and do a quick little shot. So here we have Bert, the 2016 Take and Play. 2016? Yeah, 2016. And over here we have the, I believe, I'm sorry, my water tower's in the way. I believe it's the 2002 Take and Play Mike. And over here we have the 2015 Take and Play Rex. I initially had the 2015 Take and Play Mike on here, but I like the 2002 version of Mike much more than I do the 2015 Mike. I think the 2015 Mike fits in better, but the 2002 version, I think, just looks better. Kind of goes with the aesthetic a lot more. Yeah. So, for a while, that was just the main loop. But then I started adding stuff. So let's maybe go into that. So, first thing you're going to notice is this set here. This set was there from the beginning, but I've changed a little bit of it, so we should probably go into that. This set is the Salty's switch flip and switch tracks set. It's supposed to be a dockyard set, and if you flip over this, it shows the dockyard. But I liked it because of this little mini turntable that's just big enough for the Arlesdale engines to fit on. I thought it was kind of cool, so it stuck. And not only that, but this set is elevated. So, like when you have a standard gauge engine coming by, it looks like the show where the engines are actually elevated a little more than the standard gauge ones. So one of the modifications I made was I took out this little bridge thing because it was hard to move cars through, and it never really stayed upright. It was always flopping around or like not sitting up, so I took it off. I added some track back here, and this is actually one of the more recent changes I made because initially these freight cars sat over here. But because of the water tower and the main line, I couldn't really keep them there. It didn't make sense. So I moved them over here, and that's where they stay. So that's that, and then I also added the water tower at some point. This is actually the set where they came with Fergus, but I like it here. I think it fits here nicely, so that's why it's there. There's a little tree there, too. The drivers by the Arlesdale engines. That's a recent thing, too. Well, actually, no, it's not that recent, but it's a thing I've kind of updated a little bit over time, that I've kind of worked on. So that's that. So then, if we go down the main line, we come to a little junction, and we have two things to look at. We can either look at this little clock tower, which I've had for a little while now, but not too long. The clock itself doesn't actually work, I don't think, but it's a nice little kind of antique piece. And I like it. It looks good, and we have a little figurine in there now because I got some figurines for Easter. So we have that little thing there now. And then if we go over here to the lighthouse, this lighthouse I've had for probably about 2 years now, but I love it all the same. It's a really nice little piece. There's a little lighthouse keeper there. And I think for this section of the layout, it looks really good because this is a nice little sea kind of area. I might add some water effect later, I don't know. But I think that looks good there. So then, if we keep going, these aren't recent, but they're still pretty cool. I've had these since about 2019, I believe. And the people are recent though. Those are recent additions. So here we have this little house, and these trees too are recent. They're like a 2020 thing. So we have this little house, and then we go through the bridge, under the bridge, and we have a whistle sign. And the whistle sign is actually something I really wanted to put here. I know we're getting a little sidetracked, but the whistle sign is something I really wanted to put here because it is a nice little touch. I think it's kind of a reminiscent of the episode Mike's Whistle, so I like it, and it stays there. And if we keep going, we have the duck pond. That's another more recent thing. That's been there since probably 2020 or 2019, I think. Then if we go onto the bridge here, we have another tree. And this is something that I actually have to work on still. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it because I don't have anything to scale with the Arlesdale engines. But this is actually a cattle crossing, and it's supposed to be the field where Mike lost his whistle. But as I said, I haven't found any cows that will go to scale with the Arlesdale engines. Most of the cows that I have kind of lying around the house and whatnot are bigger than the standard gauge engine, so we just cut the duck back over here. They're bigger than duck, probably about this much bigger than duck. So they wouldn't look good there. Not that the chickens and stuff over here are really that good either. They just, because they're smaller, yeah. So, if you take this track, you can go with one of two ways. You can go to this little mansion thing up here, which I don't really have a name for. It's not really a castle, so I have a hard time naming it as one of the castles from the show. Ulfstead Castle is very clearly a castle, and it's very clearly Ulfstead because of the way it's designed, so I have no problem calling it Ulfstead Castle. Whereas this is just really a house. It's in somewhat of a mansion. It's not really, in any sort of way, a castle. Although, I will say, there is a nice little kind of lord and lady or whatever in there. Those are recent, too, with Easter. Yeah, so I don't know what to call this. If you have something to call it, let me know in the comments. That'd be neat. So then if we go back here, there's two ways you can go. So let's maybe track up back to the main line, and then we'll come back over to the other junction. We'll go back to the yard. So this basically just kind of is a nice overloop thing. It's a little difficult to maneuver with trains. So this probably won't be featured at all, this loop line. It's very hard to move trains over. But it's still a nice little touch, I think. I think it adds a lot more to the layout than what would be there if, say, it was just this line. It wouldn't look as good. And plus, it adds for nice little, detailing opportunities, with the cow field, or this little tree, or the stuff under the bridge, the whistle sign, etc. So let me go back over here, back to the loop line, and we loop around, and we come back to the yard. Oh, and this is also another detail I've added recently, is this little, this rail. That's another recent thing. So then we come back up here, and I think that's basically the entirety of the line covered. But there's also some more details I'd like to discuss, so we'll go into that too. These wires, and this is something I actually have to adjust because as you can see it's slipping off. These wires are a recent thing, and I have a tub of all kinds of model railroading stuff. It's mostly just kind of scrap pieces and old track and whatnot that I don't really use. I don't really have a place for, but I keep it because I'm a train fan. I love that stuff. So these stay here. And I cut some of the wires from the model railroading cords, and I put them, and I made them little electrical wires, and I think it looks good. And they're also present here at this little mansion, or not mansion, this little house. It's definitely not a mansion. This little house. It's very present there as well. Kind of loops around. So there's that. And then, yeah. So I think that pretty well covers the entirety. Oh, actually, no, it does not, because I have to talk about these freight cars. So these freight cars, I've been here for a little bit, but they're not entirely new. So, initially, I had this freight car over here by Timothy. I had that over at the Arlesdale Railway for a ballasting car, because their main thing is ballast. But the thing was, I didn't have enough, room, and it was hard to figure stuff out, and I needed a car for the clay pits. And my final decision was, well, I don't really have a ballast mine on the Arlesdale layout. If I had one, then it would be more of an issue, but I don't. So I thought, you know what, screw it. It's going over to the clay pits, and it can stay there. So that's why that's over at the clay pits, and why now we have the Mr. Jolly's Chocolate Factory, the Sodor Sugar Co., or this sitting right here. So that basically covers the entirety of the Arlesdale layout. I'll just do a nice kind of overhead shot like this. And yeah, so that's that. And, I will leave it. I will come down here for a nice little another shot. And I will leave like that. Hope all you layout builders out there enjoy. And, have a good one.